Good.
Good evening. I'd like to call the August 20th special meeting of the
April.
20th.
April.
That's
April.
the order. I'd like everybody to join me. in the recite the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I went back and then I kind of followed it backward.
You were rather loud. Thank y'all for coming tonight. I know we're having a late start to this, and I want to thank staff's dedication in being here this late. But I turn it over to Miss Beauregard.
Mr. Kester, can you bring the screen down? Do you want us to walk through the PowerPoint again like we did last week and just to kind of do a quick reminder for everybody? And then
Whatever you're
we
comfortable
can
with.
start our discussion. Okay, I'll let Ms. Let's see.
It's the same. It's the same.
It's similar, but well, you'll see when we walk through it. It's pretty similar. Okay, budget work session number 3 begins.
Okay, go ahead and advance the next slide. So this is the slide where we list out what is not covered in the proposed FY24 budget at the 89 cents. The biggest unknown right now is the JDR courts, like the cost of that relocation. We're not funding the CIP, any new equipment request, no new personnel requests, with the exception of 2 at this point. That is the Director of Community Development, and then we had talked last week about putting in the part-time position for the permit technician. And then we're not funding the 5-year comprehensive plan or the entire budgeted debt service. We have a plan to issue, we don't know the amount, but $10 million of debt service at least. That debt service is about $800 and a couple $1,000, of which we're funding some of it in this proposed budget, but not all of it. The 570, 374 will come out of the debt fund sinking balance.
So we're funding about 300,000.
Almost, yeah. In all of our existing debt. So last week we talked about a way to get down to 86 cents. 2 cents of that would come from increasing some of our other local tax revenues. Meals tax, we would increase by 200,000. Sales tax by 124,500. Lodging tax by 100,000 and business license by 150,000. That's a total of 574,500. This is higher than what the revenue team originally proposed, but it's not as high as what we're projecting for FY23. So I feel comfortable with it. We have room built in. If there's a little slight economic downturn, we'll be fine. If there's a major one, we'll have to kind of halt spending and revisit the budget next year anyway. The other cent would come from the expenditure side. We identified some one-time expenditures that we saw in our budget and thought that we could fund these with carryover instead of funding them out of the operating budget. The wharf tree replacement, $30,000. That's to replace the trees at the wharf that are causing the sidewalk to bulge up. The 911 software, 65,000. Entrance corridor overlay, 45,000. Stanton Crossing marketing plan for 41.5. That's a total of 181,500, which equates to about 2/3 of a penny on the real estate rate. The next slide is actual budget reductions. The first one is for the CSPDC, 8,709. That is not a reduction that we are proposing. That is a change in their budget. The enterprise zone incentives, it says 20,000, but I think what we're going to do is leave that budget at 20,000 instead of going all the way down to 10,000, which means we're going to have to find another 10 in the organization-wide reductions.
Say that again.
Last week we had proposed to take the enterprise zone incentives all the way down to 10,000, just because they have not been used in the last few years. But now I think that maybe it's best to leave it at like 20,000 and not go all the way down to 10, just in case they get more attention now and they start to be used. We need to have them there and available. So that's going to take our organization-wide operational reductions up to 111,607. Once we add in that 10, because we also added in that part-time technician position, that's 22,607. So that is in that organization-wide reductions. So all that totals 107,709, which is a third of a cent. And this is how we come to the 3-cent reduction.
So we're cutting these positions. You're not gonna, I mean, we're not gonna add these positions on.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
Oh, we
yes.
are,
There's a
okay.
full-time community development director and the part-time technician. Correct.
Yes. And the last slide is the slide that you saw last week. These are just things that are in our future. We know the Harrisonburg Rockingham jail buy-in, it ends in FY25. So FY26 will have to be prepared to lose that $671,000 worth of revenue. Again, JDR Court's relocation and the related debt service. Operating costs, which will not hit us in 24, but they'll start at the end of 25 and be fully operational in 26. MS4, which you've heard about, West End revitalization, Uniontown infrastructure, greenways and pedestrian infrastructure, and then just space needs, our police department and other areas in the city, and then future capital needs for the schools. At this time, we can have a discussion, or if you have questions, we
questions.
can walk through them.
I think that it's wise to keep the 20 in there because I do think that it might get some attention and we might need to do that. So
I feel that too, now that we are talking about it.
since we're talking about it,
Yes.
yeah. So
And we haven't utilized it since 2014.
16.
Yeah.
Jesse, can you just discuss what this means every time it goes down a penny, how that affects the funding formula for schools?
So schools formula is heavily dependent upon property taxes.
Mhm.
So every penny that you reduce the rate will affect the school's FY25 contribution by $55,500.
$55,000.
Yes, for each penny
500
for each penny.
on their FY25 contribution.
So yeah. So here.
So a 3-cent reduction is 166.
It's about 166,500, yeah.
Now, how many pennies is a $6.5 million overage at the end of the year?
I don't have a calculator.
Hold
by
on, I
me.
have a
What was the
calculator.
question?
So when you
How
have an
many
over-
pennies, when you came in last year,
Mhm.
$6.5 million over budget?
How does
How
that-
many pennies is that?
Basically, it's what, 3 pennies per 100,000 roughly. I mean, 3 pennies per million. I mean, yeah, roughly.
23 cents.
How many pennies is a $12 million JDR?
You're not going to pay for a 12 million JDR in 1 year.
No, we're gonna,
Bond.
yeah.
And
have
you
to do
don't
a
even
bond.
know what the final number is going to be.
That's true.
And therefore, it is not going to affect the 24 budget at all.
But we used a lot of ARPA funds to pay for things that,
Not,
Not for
Not,
this.
not for this.
Not for
Can-
this.
And
not in
I
this.
just want to make one statement. Last year and the year before, when we made cuts, we were harped on by the other side. You need to represent all of Stanton. I'm telling you, I want you to think about this. If we keep this budget at 89 cents, you're affecting all of Stanton, those that cannot afford it. Think about it. You're going to devastate some people that cannot afford as little as you look at it and go, well, this is not that much. To them, it is. And for those that are out there paying rent,
That's
because they
already-
don't
That's already
own-
been baked into the pie. I mean, they've already.
Wrong.
I beg your,
Wrong.
no, it has
Wrong.
not.
It's gonna go back up.
Because like, I'm taking the sheet of paper that was shared to us by Mr. Metz. When he came through here last week and he did the average house in Stanton plus the 25% assessment increase this year in the tax rate, and it came to $480. Now, that's going to cost every citizen that has the average house an additional $40 per month on their mortgage payment. And if you are a landlord, you're going to turn right around and pass that on to the renter. So here we are talking out of one side of our mouth saying we need affordable housing, and we're turning around and raising their rent by $50 for the average house in Stanton. And at the same time, we're seeing development going on here in Waynesboro and Augusta County, where we are competing with a tax rate that is significantly less than ours. I appreciated the information that was shared by Ms. Beauregard, but please understand the tax rate in Augusta County is 61 cents. The tax rate, the proposed tax rate in Waynesboro is 79, and we're at 89. We're not competitive anymore, folks. If you are a real estate entrepreneur and you're going to look at put affordable housing in, are you going to go to the city where you're paying the highest taxes, or are you going to go across the county line and get by with some 61 cents?
Or you're going to go to the county where you can get much more land. And you're right, it will be cheaper taxes, but they won't have sidewalks. You know, they won't have bus service. They won't have any of this other things
They won't.
that we provide. And that costs money. And people are raising Cain all the time about the fact that we're not putting sidewalks out. We're not doing these kind of things. And how
Are
we
we
gonna pay for them?
cutting one sidewalk project out of this year's budget? So don't tell me that we're cutting budget because of this penny. No, because it's not on the budget. I admit I'd love to
Well, we
have
didn't put
budget.
a lot of that stuff in the budget because we were trying to get it lower to begin
Well,
with.
Terry, can I make a statement as well as, and you, she probably won't appreciate me saying this, but I'm going to bring her up. We didn't agree with a whole lot of anything between the two of us. But Carolyn Dole was one smart lady when it came to finances and budget. And Brad was standing right beside it when she said it. She said, and he knows, if you keep it right, that budget shouldn't be more than 80, not a penny more than 85 cents.
I heard
Said
it
it.
too.
Well, I didn't always agree with Carolyn, and I don't agree with that statement.
Well, I know that. And we're trying to make a little bit of a compromise and go with 86.
Well,
That's not a
if we're bringing
compromise.
up,
That's
if we're
what
bringing
y'all-
up
It's a
proposed,
compromise. She's telling
if
us
we're
what we
bringing up
can do
proposed,
it.
go ahead. Sorry, do you want to?
Oh, no, I'm,
Okay. If we're bringing up proposed taxes for other localities near us, I mean, Harrisonburg's saying 96, what is it? Lexington's doing 92, Lynchburg's proposing $1.05, Roanoke's $1.07, Charlottesville's 96. And 89 puts us very far in the bottom of
Yeah,
the
but-
list of cities.
look
We're
at
in the
Brad.
bottom quarter of them
Brad,
there. It's not a race to the bottom.
go to Stanton, Augusta, and Waynesboro. That's where
That's
most
our
of our,
metropolitan area. That's
that's
where we are equal the
we're
most when
definitely
you look
the
at
highest
population.
out of the Stanton, Augusta, Waynesboro thing. Now, you can go over the hill, and my son has moved to Crozet, and his tax rate is 854. They use a 3-digit. It's so it's between 85 and 86 cents to live in Albemarle County, which everybody tells me is so expensive that you can't afford to live there, and everybody's driving to our side of the mountain. And here, their rate's only 85 cents.
That's
So,
crazy.
in Albemarle County.
I don't think any county is comparable to us. I mean,
I agree.
anywhere
I
where
agree.
you gotta burn
I
your
agree, but
trash or
we-
pay somebody to
No,
get it.
no, that's provided with his homeowners association.
Yeah,
I
well,
checked-
oh,
I checked into it. But anyway, I think
So-
the truth of the matter is we had an assessment increase of 25% for residential communities.
Excuse me, Mayor
30.
Claffey, but everybody's assessment didn't go up 25 to 26%.
The
Some of them
average,
went 30.
Okay, who's the average? Who are you saying is the average?
the
What
city's
are you saying
figures-
is the average?
Leslie,
is-
tell me.
Renters in those property, are they the average? Or the higher price houses, is that the average? Or is the middle, is that the average? Or is the lower, is that the average? You're
According
saying
to
the
Mr.
average,
Haney-
what is the
According to
average?
Mr. Haney, the average residents in the city of Stanton had an increase of 26%.
Yeah, and it was market based. So like the renter, like somebody that's renting, it would be that property owner, you know.
So is that the average? Is that the
Yeah.
average?
Yes, the average
Yes.
is 26.
But how can you say that? Because they have multiple properties.
Well,
They
I
have
mean,
multiple
I can-
units. So how can you say that theirs went
Well,
up?
I mean, I know from personal experience, I mean, you know, my mother has a rental property here in Stanton, and because of the assessments going up, she raised the rent for the first time in years. Not by a lot, but enough because she had to make up that difference.
So, okay, so that.
But you're
so
talking
when
about-
you go
Just-
into revenues, when you're increasing the revenues for local sales tax and business licenses, how can you say that that's going to be increased over what we have? And when we cannot bet on that, that is
That's what they're
putting in inflation. You're betting on inflation. We can't do that. I can understand the mills tax and the lodging tax that you can do the increase on, but the local sales tax and the business, we can't bet on that. We don't know what that is going to happen in 2024. So I can
Let's
see
just- let's
taking it
just go-
down 1 cent. I
let's
can't
just-
see taking it down all the way to 86.
Let's go back to residential housing average. Jesse, can you explain this, just the total dollars, not the individual homeowners or whether you rent or not, the overall picture of what we are gaining from 2023 to 2024 based on the assessment?
Total dollars, what we're gaining.
Yes,
Yeah.
just
Just in the,
just real estate.
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to get back to the revenue neutral point is 74 cents. And we're currently at a 92 cents.
That in itself ought to explain what kind of increase we just had. When you think of 74 all the way up to 92 where we are now?
You're just asking about real
Real-
estate
just real
revenue.
estate.
Real estate, I'm not
four-
talking about any,
$4.3 million.
so that's just what's coming in from the real estate.
increase.
Did you not?
That's the real estate assessment increase at the 89 cent level. That's 4.3 million.
At the
Did you not
89
tell
Yeah,
us-
because my budget was at the 89 cents, so
what-
that's
yeah.
the revenue that we calculated.
Did you not tell us in our 2x2s when Amy and I were there, or and Alice and I were there, that if we didn't do anything and we left it like it was going to pull $5 million more dollars out of the
Yeah,
citizens'
you can
pockets?
add about $800,000 more to that to get to the
Mhm.
92 cents. So it was over $5 million. That's correct.
If we,
Correct.
If you did nothing, if you did just 92 cents.
and that's
Right?
just in real estate.
Right,
taxes.
Justin?
Yes.
It doesn't include everything
That
else.
has
Correct,
nothing to do
right.
with anything else.
But isn't that consistent with the 48% of revenue that comes from real estate, which is consistent with year after year after year?
It's,
48%. So if you move
No,
that,
it's
it's
gonna
going to
push that
lower
more.
it now.
They'll push it.
It's going to push it higher.
No, she has that in there with the 89 cent, that is
the
48%.
general property tax is 48%
And that's
of the
consistent,
general fund budget.
and that's consistent with year after year after
It's
year.
pretty
If we
consistent.
stay at
It's the
89
largest
cents.
chunk of general fund revenues, correct? It's our
Yes.
largest revenue generator.
Can I just slow things down for, everyone take a break for a second? So I'd like to just propose what I was thinking. And And maybe that'll get folks into a different way of thinking. So I was listening to what Jesse did for us last week. She found some places where we could take from this budget, and then maybe if there is enough carryover, they can be paid for through carryover. And so getting down to the 0.86 seemed like a reasonable target to fund the budget that the city manager had put forward. However, I was very concerned that we weren't putting aside money for other needs, because I feel like we can't be short-sighted about the things that are coming toward us. And I want to be specific about 3 things. And one of those is putting aside money for Uniontown, putting aside money for the West End, and putting aside money for the library. And why I say that is, we have the West End in our city plan. We talked about it as a priority at our retreat, and it comes up at probably any community meeting, came out throughout our campaign and probably everybody's campaign who ran for city council in the city. And I think we need to put our money where our mouth is when it comes to this budget. I had an idea that if we kept what Jesse had determined, taking these items out, but kept the 0.89, I think the difference, Jesse, if I'm not mistaken, is $863,709.
Probably very close.
And so I thought if we could allocate just to look like we have said that West End is our priority. And if we could I divided that by 3, and if we could put 288,000 into a fund for 2024 to be used toward, whatever it is that the small area plan comes up with as suggestions, I think it would go a long way in winning some confidence from the residents of the West End to say, okay, they are listening, they do care. And it's important because development of that area is going to help that area. It's going to, I think they'll feel respected and glad that we've put something into them. And same with Uniontown. It's the only thing, one of the biggest things I've heard about since we joined council. It was a new issue for me to hear about. But clearly doing that small area plan, it's going to generate a report that is going to probably generate some desires to do some development. And again, with the library, we allocated funds from ARPA to do a redesign study. Isn't it from ARPA?
Actually, the
From-
redesign studies in the capital budget.
It's in the capital
roof
budget.
That's in.
Okay,
ARPA,
I'm
yep.
sorry. And so
Which is good.
we're allocating money to do a redesign, and there was a redesign, I believe, done in 2014, and nothing came out of that. A
It
report was
really- well, it
generated.
was really a lot of money.
Like
And so-
14 million.
14
Okay.
million,
Oh, God.
yeah.
Okay, so, but my point is, if we're putting money into doing a redesign, we can at least put a little away for the library. And-
Can I stop you for 1 second there?
Yeah.
There is not a mechanism in Stanton city government to put money aside. We don't have a savings account.
Well,
We
it would-
can't invest in a market,
It would be added as a reserve to the CIP plan.
mhm.
which we already
would-
have.
We're
Yeah.
not funding the
lot of-
CIP unless we have money left over.
But that's the way we've done it now for 5 years.
Yeah.
And we've only not funded it one time, and it wasn't that or was it funded in COVID year as well?
COVID year, wasn't it?
Wasn't the CIP plan eventually funded even in the COVID year?
I believe so, yeah.
Yes.
Mhm. With
It's
carryover.
always been funded, just not up front. It's not like we don't do the projects. It's not like we overlook them.
And it's not like we're not using that money for things.
We
that
are
need to be
utilizing that
using
money.
it for.
Every single one of the proposals you have made are valid and wonderful. And every single one of them has a task force that is trying to get a study to figure out what we need to do. And once we get that plan, that's when we need to spend the money. But we've all heard horror stories of government and, $600 hammers, in the military and stuff, that money gets wasted when you have it. when you're not spending it on a specific topic. And we just can't be taking money from our citizens saying,
We're
well, we're
talking
gonna
about
spend-
$40 a month.
Well,
more.
I'm sorry.
we're talking 4 million.
Yeah, but that's for, among most people, that's going to be about $40 a month.
Well-
You and me, it's not a problem. There's
But
people
your
out there
average-
that can't afford $40.
But if your average resident is renting, his rent's gonna go up $50 a month.
At least.
It's going to go up anyway. I mean, the thing is that there's just not, there's so,
It doesn't have
Okay.
to go up
It's
that last 50 cent, that last $50 unless we raise it. It's gonna go up maybe 30.
But it
It does-
still goes up yearly. They increase your, when
Um,
you redo your lease and when you're renting, they take it up every year.
Alice, you go ahead and raise the damn last thing, and then you
I
look in the
didn't-
eyes
I
of the
didn't
people you
raise
do
it.
it to
We're
and say, I'm
taking it
sorry.
down from 92 cents.
Yeah,
We're-
it's
it's
being
going
lowered
down.
and it's
It's
being
being-
lowered to a historic
can-
low. We have never been in the 80s. And the
You're-
good
you're
news
correct.
is, that we are in the very lowest of localities in Virginia at 0.89. At 0.92, we're in the very lowest still.
But
So
our
I,
neighbor who's most like us, Waynesboro,
Waynesboro
still gonna
has a
be
whole
10
different economic
have about-
situation. They have a lot more, they get a lot more meals tax, sales tax than we do. And there's nothing we can do about that. That shopping center the Target shopping center would have been in Stanton if the state would allow the Frontier Museum to sell it, but that's neither here nor there. They have more retail than we do. I just drove down 340 yesterday. I can't get over the number of fast food kind of places, and we could do that. We could allow all these fast food places in here, but that was the one thing that we didn't want to do 10 years ago.
Can-
Was allow all these fast food places in, which they pay taxes and they also pay minimum wage.
Okay.
You know, and it's not I'm worried about Stanton Crossing. We're just very slowly taking care of that when we should be putting that that should be on the front burner.
this could be a different equation if Stanton Crossing was finished and,
Amen.
well,
but
And
it's
we've been
not, and
saying
we've
that
got to
all
pay
along.
into it. It's going to cost us a lot of money to finish Stanton Crossing. Michelle, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to go back. Steve, this is my first budget, so I'm not aware how the CIP works exactly. So what you're saying is if we were to just say that $863,000 would be set aside, put in the CIP, we wouldn't necessarily be able to say that X amount of money should be spent on one thing, Y amount of money should be spent on another. It's just one big pot of money.
No, you can
No,
set
you
up a
can
reserve.
you
for-
could set
Set it
it
up, yeah.
You could set
Projects.
Okay.
And in the CIP, the funds carry
Right.
over year after year. It's
Right.
not like the operating budget.
So it is a
And we do have
possibility, yeah.
reserves in the CIP. It's a mechanism for
What's
just,
the reserves, Leslie, right now?
well, it depends on the project. Different projects
Oh,
have
yeah, it
reserves.
varies.
Yeah, it just depends on what the project is. So for instance, I'll take the greenways, that's a couple $100,000 a year, but we're building that up to do a large project, for instance. So that's not uncommon in the capital budget. I mean, that's what it's there for too, is to use those funds to build up for a project that's,
Mhm.
And
Can't
don't
afford it
forget,
one
when you
year.
get into the proprietary funds, they're all funded at what, 16% reserve?
That's the safety net.
That's a
Yeah.
safety net, yeah.
Okay,
We have
I hear that.
safety money.
I hear that, but I just,
Don't
when
want to
people,
really touch that safety
No.
net.
Yeah, we're
Okay.
trying to get to
That-
18.5.
can I just really want to get back to the West End and the library and the Uniontown, because this is something we're asked about a lot. And it is,
Litigation.
and it is the people in the West End who are the low income people that we're talking about. So I think putting some money and infusing some money into that area is, is part of the thing we need to be doing. And so, I just think if we can in any way earmark these funds in the CIP, again, this is my first budget. I don't know how it happens. But to say, when people say, what are you doing for us in the West End, which happens all the time, we can at least have a response instead of shaking our heads and saying we don't have any money for it. And, just start with minimal changes, whatever it is that we get back in the report from the small area plan to say, okay, they said do some beautification, we'll do some plantings, start out slow, but at least take some baby steps and show some improvement in that area. And if that means cutting somewhere else and looking for other areas, I just think those are the library. That's the biggest thing I've heard is money for the library, money for West End. And I know Uniontown is a much more complicated situation. And so I don't know how you all feel about that because I think that's a much bigger project. But just looking at those two things that I would like to be able to say that the city is supporting in some way.
Was a flood
And
mitigation.
And it's,
mean-
I don't mean a $600 hammer, Steve.
So,
I mean,
but-
whatever
but
funding.
Michelle, when-
Yeah.
When you say that, to me, that sounds counterintuitive.
Okay.
When you say that, okay, the West End, that is a lot of the people that are low income. But I want to go ahead and set this money aside to make them feel like we're going, that's kind of like the old saying, the government gives with this hand, but it takes away with this one.
Well, it's just planning.
I don't know what
mean,
that
you know,
means,
if you're putting
Mark.
money away,
Can you
you're
explain?
planning
I
to
don't know
do
what that
something.
means.
If
I mean,
give
that's,
them money
you
on
gotta-
the
you
one
gotta
end,
be
you're
able to fund
taking
it.
From their money on the taxes with this one.
You're seeing a direct result
see.
of their taxes.
Okay,
You know,
but
we
taxes
want-
would be spent on something that
It-
concerns them.
Right.
Sorry, Steve, go ahead.
Well, let's talk about the West End, and I'm all in favor of doing something for the West End.
Yeah,
But if we want to build a sidewalk in the West End, then go to Mr. Johnson and say, what can we do to build sidewalks?
mhm,
And then we'll fund it.
mhm. Yeah,
And if you want to do planting, go to the landscape committee and say, let's concentrate our planting on the West End. And he has money in his fund as well.
that, I'm sorry, that isn't allocated currently to something else or?
If we direct
I don't
him to
know.
it, will
Right.
be.
well,
I
we
see.
gotta
Yeah.
have the money to allocate. I
Yeah, then
mean,
what
we
do we
can't.
take it from?
Yeah, yeah,
For
we gotta-
instance, they've
1.9.
done all this replanting. I went to the landscape meeting and they've done a significant amount of replanting. Why can't we tell them to go to the West End and do it?
I don't know. It's my first time. Thank
Because
you,
that's
Steve.
part
I
of the
appreciate that.
unfunded request.
I appreciate that.
$3,507,000. Wouldn't that be part of that?
In the CIP?
Yeah.
So it's not
So it's
funded.
currently
It's-
unfunded.
it's unfunded.
Yes.
And then next year, we miss 670,000 from the
What is that West End,
jail buy-in.
what is that money going to?
So what, the Harrisonburg Rockingham Jail buy-in?
No, the
Yeah.
West End money. It's on the CIP that we haven't spent. Do we have any money at all?
No, there's
For
no
the West
money in
End.
there. No.
Talking about the money that we allocated as part of the
It's for a
ARPA
study.
funds.
Yes. We did.
We
That's the
know
only
about the
funds.
studies.
Okay.
We know about the studies, and that's,
There's no other dollars dedicated to the West End.
so you give us a project and we can fund it, but we are not going to buy any land.
No, of course not. Right,
No, we're not
And we're
talking
not
about
gonna
buying
develop.
land or nothing.
right. Of
But where
course
we
not.
gonna-
No,
Talk
of
about
course
sidewalks
not.
How
and
you gonna
right-of-ways.
fund that?
All I just said was, yeah,
How, where's the money to come to fund that project? If we bring a project.
Because we're gonna fund the CIP. That's the way we have been. I mean, it's the CIP gets funded.
But we have to allocate what we,
Over.
ahead of time, what we're gonna spend it on, so we know how much money we need.
Correct. Correct. Something like a sidewalk project. Mr. Johnston, can you tell us what the method would be if we were to say, let's put some sidewalks in the West End because we have a mess out there?
Oh, like any CIP project gets put on the CIP and then programmed into either the current year or a future year.
And do
and-
we have?
And
any such-
we do have in the CIP, Jesse, I think, I forget the exact amount, but I do think we have a sidewalk set aside in there. It's again similar to the other ones where you sort of build up
Oh,
an
for
amount,
new sidewalks, like
Yeah, for new-
100,000 a year.
100,000 a year, I believe.
And
Now we get
this
most
is-
of our sidewalk recommendations from the Bike Ped Committee,
Mhm.
who, we're not in the sidewalk deciding business at Public Works. We're in the sidewalk building business.
All right. So, I mean, for instance, we've been after the Edgewood project for sidewalk.
Forever.
Is that?
All right. That's when we're working with VDOT because
That's a
that
VDOT one.
requires some land acquisition extended, but
Does West Beverly have any situation that would be similar, or is that going to be a city-funded one?
there is currently a sidewalk project in West Beverly that runs from, I believe, Grubert to Morris Mill to connect, sort of fill in a missing section of sidewalk. That is in design. We hope to have that out on the street for construction later this year.
Is that ours or is that VDOT money?
That is HUD money, I believe. Yeah,
Oh, it
so
is HUD.
it's
yeah.
HUD money. So it's ours now, but we got it from HUD.
And that's happening now.
That's happening now.
Yeah.
West End project.
A little bit of sidewalk right there in front of the Beverly Convenience. So, I mean, I'm appreciative. I really just want to, and I thank you, Mr. Johnson, for clarifying that. And so where does that leave us, guys?
I don't know, but I personally, I think if we cut this too much, we're going to regret it down the road because we don't know what's coming in the next years, you know, and I mean, they're all calling for recession now. And
Just go put even more on.
well, it's going to put more on the city. The
Right,
city
but
is
y'all
actually an
be
entity
depending
too. I
on
mean,
this
it's,
Also, and if they don't have.
Cutting
they're
it too
not
much,
going out
cutting it
spending.
too much is 74, 77.
That's right.
That's cutting it too
That's
much.
too much.
Anything, yeah.
Yeah. We're compromising in the sense that we're saying that, you know, if you went to, you know, if we were here saying when it needs to be its equalization at 74, that's not
That's not practical.
that's not practical. That's not reality. We know that. You know, even at 79, I think our city manager would probably have a coronary.
She did the morning I came in and told her that's what Waynesboro had
You know,
proposed the
when
night
they come
before.
back and say it, you know, we proposed 89 and now we're looking at 86 and we're not going to cut any services. We're still going to be able to keep what we have and,
yeah, but
you
we're
know, all
also,
that.
we're also
Then
predicting
that is
higher
something that we need
sales
to
tax,
look
meals
at
tax and stuff like
because
that.
of the revenues and things the projected that's coming in. And it's given relief to our citizens that are saying that, you know, based on the assessments, it needs to be seriously looked at.
But I think if you put it to the citizens, and it's amazing when you talk to people and you explain to them what their money's going for, they're a lot more understanding because they realize how cost of everything has gone up. You know, I've had so many people respond to me like, please don't cut the school money. Please, you know, you don't need to cut the taxes if we're going to build a court. You know, I mean, I think that we need to make sure that we have enough cushion, you know, and
But
even
not to take money and put it aside without spending it.
we're not going to put, we've got uses for this money. We just keep pushing things down the road that we can't do. You know, I mean, right now the water fund's pretty much depleted and we need to worry about the pipeline that goes out to the reservoir, you know.
Tell me that that's being funded by some of this ARPA money.
The water.
Line?
Yes.
Oh.
No.
No.
Well, the Gardner Springs,
No, the Gardner
Springs.
Springs, yeah, but I'm
Yeah.
talking about the one that goes all the way out.
Yeah, Gardner Springs is our backup.
Yeah.
So that we can do the.
And we've got
100-year
pipes that are
project.
over 100 years old.
But
and
Mr. Johnson has told us over and
That's
over that
ARPA.
those
Gardner
are, in you know,
Springs is our butt.
they're okay, that he would tell us if there was an issue with them.
And
We
can't get-
continue to monitor them.
That's right.
So how about
Doing
in
great.
6 months, he go to monitor and all of a sudden he see a crack? I mean,
That's where,
we don't,
if possible, I mean, if it was an emergency, we have reserve to touch on in these cases.
Is that the 16.5% that we put aside? Yeah.
16.
We can't use that for things like that.
Mm.
Sorry. I mean, we would not be able to touch our safety net for a
The
pipe
water fund.
project.
Right.
Yeah, so we would have to figure something out, obviously, because that would be a critical issue.
Mhm.
And hopefully that, knock on wood, will be
Right.
okay for a while until we can plan for that, which we'll need to do.
So it's the history geek.
And we're-
I wanted to dig into it. The last big real estate boom was 07. And property values went up 35% on average. The single family residential assessment change went up 35%. Council clearly went crazy and dropped it 6 cents from 0.96 to 0.90. And then over the next few years, brought it back up to 0.97.
so was that a yearly bring up or
Well,
was it
yeah.
every 2 years?
Oh, well, yeah,
Bring it up
it
every
stayed at
year.
0.90 for a few years and then jumped 5 cents back up to 95 in 2013. So yeah, the last time, the bigger jump than this last time, it dropped from 0.96 to 0.90.
Well, 2008, 2009 is when we had the real estate crash. You know.
Yeah, that's true. It did crash, but it didn't crash that much here. The adjustment was about 10%. It dropped total, a little bit, 10 or 11%. And then it recovered all of that in about 5 years. So
in 2025, we'll be losing 650-some thousand from the jail, right?
670.
670.
It's in
2026 will be our first year without that revenue.
Oh,
And
2026.
that doesn't count in anything to do with the amount of inmates we have in there.
Nope.
So
No,
that
sir.
could be, what is that now? What are we paying now just for the amount of inmates we have in there?
3.2.
3.2 million.
And that's,
That can
and
increase
that's,
at any
and
time.
Oh, yes.
that's funded, right?
Correct.
Yes.
It is.
And that's something that we don't have no control over.
Correct.
So if y'all say at 85, you all right with 86, why not move it up to 87 and we bring it down to, and y'all move it up to?
Well, I was going to point out the
Nobody
fact,
proposed that. So instead of 3 cents, let it be 2 cents.
I was going to point out a couple different cents and tell you what the difference is. At 92 cents, which is what it is now, based on the average house value increase in 25%, that would drive your taxes up, your real estate taxes up 25%. All right?
Yeah.
At 89 cents, it goes up 20.9%. At 86 cents, it goes up 16.8. At 85 cents, it goes up 15.4. All of these are hefty increases to our average citizens. But your tax bill is going to increase. You are going to have to come up with more money. Then I was taking this tax analysis that Dave Metz did. And, you know, he came up with the number $481. That's $40 a month for everybody's mortgage payment.
He was looking at the increase of the net worth of the property also.
He was.
At
Well, and a lot of
62.
people
Yeah, when
put a
you
lot of
sell it
money-
in 20 or
You
30
sell it,
years.
But that's not
But
gonna
a lot
help the
of people
person
went
that's
ahead
paying
and
for it.
did all these improvements to their homes, which drove their real estate prices up. I mean, that's what happened during COVID.
Mine went up 40%, Terry. I'm not saying a thing about my own. I'm just saying I'm worried about the average citizen who is struggling to make the mortgage payment.
I mean, I'm worried about the elderly folks who are on fixed incomes. And yes, they know everything's going up but they're telling us, you know, y'all have seen them too. They're saying, you know, 89 is too much.
I don't know how the young couples do it. I mean, to this day, I don't know how young couples do it, buy houses out there and it just doesn't make sense to me how they do it.
We're going to put them out of the market.
They're not gonna buy them in
because-
Stanton.
Well,
Because
no,
they're
they
gonna
would
go to
buy them in
Waynesville.
Stanton because we are one of the lowest tax rates in the state of Virginia.
And they don't
At
have to buy in
0.92.
Stand because we don't
At
have that much
0.89 brings
property
us
to
even
buy
lower.
in
We're in the
Stand.
bottom 20 something percent that. I don't have the specific thing
well,
on that, but we're
look,
way down.
It is and it isn't. I mean, I also looked at the county rates. Now, before you
can't-
say
you
one,
can't
before you,
even-
wait. Before you say one word, I understand there's a difference.
Okay.
All right. But when you're talking 63 cents, it's low enough to encourage people to give up the city and go to the county.
But they also have a lot more households, a lot more people paying, so that tax can be spread out over more people. You know, I mean, if they had 25,000 people, then their taxes would probably be.
They have 58,000. We have 25, 26.
They have 77. Is that right? 58?
Look at how many employees in this city. Look at
They
Cat
live in the
firemen.
county.
policemen,
Yeah.
people that work in this city hall. How many of them live out in the county? Because they can't afford the city.
Majority of them, right? I mean, less
Yes.
than we
Well,
have.
how
Well,
many
a
of them
lot of
also,
people-
how many of them
They
have
need a
the? how
pay
many-
increase also.
Yeah, exactly.
But they're getting that.
They're getting that,
that.
and we're not
No,
cutting it either.
5% is not giving them an increase because their health benefits went up 10. So where's the increase in that?
Bob doesn't quite keep up with inflation last year.
Right.
You're right. Which is why money's tight. Which is
So
why we
guys,
wanna
so what
really
is,
want-
what's our goal here? Because I'm looking at the clock and I know we need to work this out, but what's our goal here is to just to land on a tax rate? Is that our, we want to leave here tonight? What, to let Leslie know what a tax rate is? And I think everyone knows where everyone else stands.
Well, then
And-
if you're hell set on it, take the vote and get on with it.
Yeah, come on, settle down. Come on.
Well, I'm fine with that.
I know you are. If it was up to you, Terry, I love you dearly, but you'd raise it to 95 or 96.
No, we're proposing a historic low
I was,
city.
Based on a historic high assessment.
That's right.
and
Oh,
I,
no, the increase was higher in 07 and they only dropped it to
Well, the
90.
thing is if you cut it now, you're probably going to have to raise it in another 2 years anyway.
yeah,
I mean,
That's a different story.
yeah, but you know, we go all, it's just like the water fund and all these other things. We don't raise these rates every year like we should. And so that nobody, it's never a huge increase, but we, the way we work it out, it's, you know, it'll go down like, oh, it's gonna be a 15% increase. Well, like on the water and sewer bill, that's only about $8 a month or 2 months. You know, that's not very much to have good water and sewer, you know, but you got to pay for these things. And if you short on now, if you go cut it to the bare minimum now, then we'll be playing catch up 2 years from now.
But we're
That-
not cutting it to the bare
We're
minimum.
not cutting.
We're
you
not
right.
cutting it to the-
74 is bare minimum.
Bare minimum would be 74. Bare,
Mhm.
you know, cutting it to the bone would be in the upper 70s, but they're saying, they're
89%,
telling us
you're
that
increasing it
that 86 is
20.9%.
not something that's not feasible.
87 would be better.
Well, I think Alice, you know, you're presenting a compromise. So what's people think? I mean, let's talk about it.
87 would be better. Because it would leave the sales tax where it is and the business license where it is. It would go ahead and bring up the mills tax and the lodging tax. And then where she found the extra 1 cent. In the, where did you find the extra ones? The
It's on the
60
expenditure side through one-time revenues and budget reductions.
expenditure and the
But it's made up of two different things.
here,
One-time
one-time expenditure
expenditures
and a
and-
budget reduction.
Yes.
She's found another cent. So that would be 2 cents and from 89 to 87.
So you could go from 89 to 87.
Well, starting next year, we're going to have to raise it 2 cents just to cover the jail.
Well, are you, let's talk about, let's get through this first.
I'll go down to 89, but I don't think we should go any lower than that. That's what they worked out this budget and I think that budget was tight. So I mean, I'm at 89 right now.
Brad?
but before we, I'm sorry, but
Oops.
I'm sorry. Can we just go back? And I'm sorry, I don't mean to
Go
be a
ahead.
slow learner here, but again, when I do my own budget at home, I have my current expenses and then I know what's coming down the pike. And so I'm always putting aside. And so for us, putting aside is the CIP and whatever the carryover is. Is that correct? So,
Mhm.
so that's sort of our savings account and what pays for, like we were talking about,
800 and
any, right, projects that we would like to have taken care of. All right, so let's say, you know, something needs to be redesigned in the library. We could allocate that CIP money toward whatever is needed in the library. But rather than setting money aside proactively, we wait until the expenditure is identified and then you allocate money. I'm trying to see if it's from the front end or the back end. You understand my question?
I do. I mean, it just depends. Some projects you would have a reserve because you don't know, you're going to have to do something,
Yeah,
but you just don't know what that project, let's take the greenways, for instance.
right.
Or let's take the bike and ped. So we set aside money for bike and ped. There's a plan that was adopted. The
Right.
first project for that is Churchville, but that
Right.
needed to build up over time. That wasn't going to be funded by the $100,000 a year that goes into the CIP for the bike and ped plan. So that took a few years. So in that case, you can build up those reserves
Right.
and then fund a project. In
Right.
other cases, you may fund a project in 1 year or in a couple of years if you have the money to do that.
Like the lights and the ball field lights
Right,
at
yeah.
Montgomery Hall. That's something that,
Sure.
it's taken a couple of years, but now
Exactly.
it's
Now we've got it
we've
built
got
up,
it
we can do it.
built up.
right.
And that's not a large amount of money,
Right,
but
right.
you had to be patient and wait until you had that. to take
And that's the nice thing about the CIP because it's a 5-year plan. And so you can do that. I mean, that's what it's designed for. So you could pay for projects up front if you have the funds, like if you're going to bond a project, for instance,
Right.
or you pay for it over several years and then you pay for a big project out of those reserves,
Mhm.
out of that project. But you always assign it to a project.
Right.
But it's also up to council's discretion to change that.
Right.
So if the council decides in a few years, they don't want to have a reserve for something because it's not a priority anymore, you can move it to a different project. And that's each year when you go through the budget process, that's the
Well,
time.
that happened to
You can do that.
the CAD thing, right? Because we had originally had 600,000 for 2 years and y'all changed it to 100,000 this year and was.
Well, in that case, I think the cost estimate was
Yeah,
about,
the cost estimate is cheaper. And then you
Yeah.
had talked about using the fire truck reserve. I
but that
have
was
not
gone,
got a
right?
vote on that yet, but
you all have not decided,
Yeah.
voted on that
Can I
yet.
make
so.
one statement that Terry just said and some of us just said? We'll set that money aside for this project. And what happens is when council decides that they want to spend it on something else, that's exactly what they do. They pull out of here and pay for this over here. It has happened time after time after time.
And that
No,
is from the
not-
carryover, right? That's from the carryover. You would use the carryover funds to do that.
Well, we're not
Is that-
funding
that's
the
what you're
C,
talking about?
we're not funding the CIP until the end of the year to see what we have left over. So if we have 4 million left over, that goes into CIP, I assume. And if we have no millions left over, then we don't fund the CIP.
Have we ever not having anything left over?
not in the last few years.
In the last 5 years, Terry, since I've been watching it, the minimum has been 2 million,
And it's been as
between 2.5.
high as what?
6.5.
6.5.
Right.
We're looking at 4.5 probably this year. I mean, and I'm not trying to be
Well, a lot of the
unrealistic.
reason that was too, Steve, was because we really lowballed everything. We lowballed because of COVID, because we didn't
That's
know
what-
that.
That's why I went back before that and we were averaging 2.5 before that. Folks, there's money there. I don't have a problem with spending money. I think we have task force and studies going on for Uniontown, for the West End, for bicycle path. I mean, we
And the courts.
have money. No, I don't think we do have the court money because we don't know any idea what it's gonna cost us.
But we want to make sure that we're not going to borrow a whole lot.
Well,
So
we're gonna
we,
have to
can we,
borrow. If we
10
borrow
million
10
easy.
million right now, I think a
Well-
payment's roughly about
She's got
800,000.
2.5 million set aside right now. And we've only known about this since ARPA, right?
well, that,
But we've also
What's
got the
ARPA?
$10 million bond in the budget.
Right.
But that's
We're
just a
making
guess.
plans.
That's an estimate.
We're
so
So we,
that's 10 million in the budget.
yes, ma'am.
Yeah, it's
So we
already
have the
there.
debt
Well, we have to
payment.
sell bonds
I mean,
for
some of
that.
that's getting funded out of the fund, the debt service fund balance
Mhm.
that Ms. Moyers mentioned earlier. So it's not all coming out of the general fund. But the most of it is. So,
And the service per year is that right? 800?
correct, for a $10 million
For a $10 million
bond.
bond.
It's,
I mean, think about
that's
it.
about all we can do so far until we get,
So we
close.
know.
Oh, yeah, no, we don't know. We know it'll be expensive, but we don't
Right.
know.
Yeah, it's gonna be expensive, right?
Yeah.
And
gonna be awful.
we may get lucky. Who knows?
I
Open
doubt we'll
price.
get lucky.
I doubt it.
I'm telling you. The worst thing about it, everything costs so much more now. I mean, just to remodel or even build from scratch, it's just outrageous.
So so can I just ask, so let's say we get this small area plan back in May or June, no, probably July for West End, and it
Good luck.
outlines all kinds of things that the citizens that live there wanted, the business people wanted. And I'm just doing this as an example because it's what's on my mind.
Okay.
And let's say, they estimate that it would cost, I'm just throwing out $1 million, around $1 million, I have no idea. would we be able to, from what we currently have, if we all decided that we would agree on, okay, we want to do 1/3 of the things that they suggested on this plan, and it'll cost us $330,000, and we all voted on it, and we would have the money in our current fund to do that. Because from what the mayor said, we would just direct staff to do what we want with.
It wouldn't be in the 24 budget, correct? Tell her
No,
the
it would not.
timetable.
It would be in the,
You would have to add it to your
CIP.
probably FY25 CIP and find a way to fund it.
you would do it as an amendment? Could you do it as that way?
Depending on where the money's coming from, it would either come from carryover, which a lot of it will be spoken for between CIP and the courthouse. Or
Current
you would
CIP.
take
current-
it from another project. I mean, you
So-
have, I don't know where the money would come from at this point.
But what you're saying is if you were to hear the results this summer,
Yeah, just example, yeah.
and the CIP plan is the first thing that's done during the budget process, and usually that's completed by January, right? And that would be probably the earliest logical date. And then that could be put on the next year and be funded as soon as the July 1 the next year, correct? So about as fast as you can get anything done in government is, and that would be a 10-month turnaround.
Fast, but that's as fast as it.
That's as fast as it goes. And that's stretching it. Yeah, and that's a drawback, but there's not a savings account. We can invest the money, and say, well, we're gonna hold this money aside so that if we want to do this, we have it. We can't do that.
We don't
We
do
have to-
that.
We have to have a balanced budget.
But it just sounds like that's what the CIP is,
That
to be
is what the
honest.
CIP.
That
Yeah,
is
it
what the
It's a
CIP is.
5-year plan.
And you can have a reserve. You could, but those accounts can have balances that carry over year after year after year in specific projects.
After they get in the CIP.
Correct, yeah. And so,
Yeah.
and you can dedicate, I mean, we're not doing it in the FY24 budget, but you could certainly decide, we're gonna make a transfer from the general fund to the CIP. I mean, and that would immediately fund a project on July 1st for 24.
Mhm.
That's
but-
probably happened. I would.
It has happened.
I mean,
Yeah,
that's-
I mean, it's just not happening now because we're gonna fund the CIP with carryover. That won't be in place until next year, early next year.
So does that slow down other projects that we want to have done? I mean,
By not funding the CIP,
we can't fund anything till we know what we
it
have.
would
at the
delay
end.
them at least 6
Delay
months
them, yeah.
because we won't have final carryover numbers until our audit is done, which is about December. And at that time, I would bring a budget amendment to you that you would
So-
introduce and then hopefully adopt at the following meeting.
So when the year ends, when do you first get your information that you start seeing, like really, we go from projections to actuals? When do you start seeing that? I know you don't
Um,
tell us usually until,
We have a
Late October.
45-day period where we are still recording revenues and numbers that go all the way up to mid-August. So we don't have semi-solid numbers until September.
I was gonna say
October.
Yeah.
That's when we start to hear. But
That's usually, you have a good number by October. I mean, of course, I track it now because I want to know what's coming at us. I mean, so I don't want to wait until September and be surprised or shocked, but yeah. It's something that we track throughout the year, how our expenses doing versus budget, how our
But on
meals
a
and sales
quarterly
tax.
basis,
I report it to you on a quarterly
quarterly basis?
basis, but we look at it.
monthly.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, her next report will be May 11th for the court. So that's the last quarter you'll hear for fiscal year 23 until year end later this year. So.
and that sheet Alice has, the projections for the taxes so far, that's still, I mean, nothing's changed since we last talked.
No,
from what
things
you're
are still
seeing.
trending about the same as far as I can see.
I appreciate the initial budget and then the second budget that you did for us last week. And I'm just, still aware that of all of the things that are not being funded, that the department heads requested, and those are new equipment requests and new personnel requests. we won't be doing a 5-year comprehensive plan, which is maybe fine. And the entire budget debt service we won't be able to handle that. So there are a lot of things that aren't being taken care of in this budget. And then you did find the other places to reduce so that you could propose a 0.86. And that I'm sure took you quite a while to go through line by line to figure out what you
I
were.
still
gonna
have
do.
not met with department heads to let them know which lines I have chosen
Okay,
and how much I'll
okay.
be reducing it.
Okay.
And that's just across the board.
It's various departments across the city. Not one department's gonna be hit like with a great amount. It will be something it's workable for their department.
But I mean, yeah, I just want to say that not everything that everybody asked for was funded and
Very little no new equipment has been funded.
Other than what we got through ARPA funds.
Yes, that is separate.
So that like we still like police cars and stuff like that.
That's gonna, did they get a grant for that?
The PD department did recently get an ARPA grant just for PD. They're going to be able to fund 4 police cars out of that ARPA grant, which will be on a budget
Or-
amendment that I bring to you May 27th.
good news.
Wow.
And there's a few other pieces of equipment that we're to get. I don't exactly remember what they are, but is it 300 and some thousand? So yeah,
Like that.
they have not got the official word that it's been awarded. I think that will not come until May 11th, but it is a non-competitive grant. And so we already know Stanton's allocation. So as long as the equipment we presented to them is acceptable, then I think we'll get the full amount.
Does that come from state?
Department of Corrections?
Yeah, probably, yeah, it's gotta be passed through to the state and to us. Yeah.
It's
I think it
federal
is
ARPA money.
DOJ.
That's
I think
great.
It is DOJ.
So can I go back to my hypothetical? So if we,
Yes, please.
thank you. So if we were to, even though this is a work session, so I'm asking questions so I can learn how this works. So again, this was the 0.86 budget, the things that you took out. So if you were to remain with this plan, and as we said, there was an $863,000 difference.
Mhm.
So if we were to keep that plan that you had and remain at 0.89, just for giggles, guys, just for giggles. I understand that we don't do anything with money that doesn't have a line item, correct?
I would need to know what you wanted to do with the
Okay.
additional revenue,
Okay.
whether it was CIP or something different. I would need to
Okay.
know what the intention is.
Because my intention was to put that toward the future needs, which were West End, Uniontown, and
The scenario that you
library, yeah.
describe is a
Yeah.
CIP reserve.
Capital
Right.
budget
And so
scenario.
is it possible to ask for that to be put into CIP? It just seems like I just feel like we know what's coming down the pike and it's short-sighted and please understand, I understand that people are going to be paying more. And I find it offensive to say that I don't care about, if that's not your exact words, that I don't care about people's day-to-day needs. But I'm also aware that we're responsible for providing the finances for the city to run and to run well. And as I think Brad said, it's not a race to the bottom, and I don't think would run Stanton into the ground. But I really want to look at what Stanton needs, not just in this moment right now, but I think that's what the CIP, the 5-year plan is about, is looking forward. And I'm looking at this list and I want us to be forward thinking about that. And I want everyone to just sit there and consider that. And I am very aware of people and families and their needs.
I mean, again, we have one of the lowest rates. Mr. Johnson. No, we did an engineering study for Uniontown, adding sewer in there. Do you recall the general estimate? We had a general estimate on that. Was it, I recall it being something like 4.2, 4.5 million.
I think it's incident fund, is it listed?
Yeah,
I'm sorry to drop that. on
yeah,
you.
it's,
I apologize. I should have told you ahead of time. But I mean, just-
that is, Yes, it was 3, 4. I think I'm trying to remember if water was more expensive or sewer was more expensive.
I think it was sewer because we had to
Sewer.
dig
Sewer
to
because we
the
had to get
core of the earth.
well, we've got to get
gravity
underneath the
feed.
railroad and,
Sewer.
and that's never fun. The water is arguably more important to the system writ large because it restores a loop that was severed when the National Avenue Bridge was removed. So that is citywide, the more pressing issue. But I'll also point out that those projects were done essentially in a vacuum, just looking at water and sewer. And we need the small area study to determine where in the development order those projects need to fall with the other non-plumbing issues that need to be resolved in Uniontown.
All of which costs money.
Yes, again, the
And
small area study is not just a list of things that need to be done, but also a order in which the right order in which to do them. So though that water and sewer information will slot into that study somewhere, but I can't today tell you if that's going to be high on the list, low on the list, and where water and sewer. To some extent, it's one big Gordian knot in that everything you tug tightens or loosens something else. So recommendations on transportation out there would impact our ability on where we could put water and sewer lines. That's why we have a small area study to kind of sort all out what's chicken, what's egg, and get it all in there. But those, did you find them? I'm stalling,
I
Leslie,
know,
so
I
you
know.
can.
Yeah,
find-
no, that's
I'm
fine.
vamping here.
A lot
was
is
a
the
lot.
answer overall. Now,
Thought it was
also,
in there.
I know engineering has been working with Public Works as well, flood mitigation ideas and I know that's a long, there's no silver bullet for that. I know but that's a long process, but there's also
Yeah, but I have it
a lot of
somewhere.
potential projects in there as well, too. And flood mitigation is definitely something that's very important to the citizens of this city after, a couple of years ago on that. So I think, we want to be able to be fluid enough to move forward with that. That was
Well, we
unintentional.
also don't know what our stormwater
Okay.
fees are going to be, over the next 5 years. Was it 2 million a year that we were saying that we might have to spend, or?
Could be more than that.
Could be more than that.
That was a depressing night.
Yeah. Because I sure don't want to be buying credits from some other town. That's just throwing your money up in the air. That would just be awful.
These are the things that are on my mind on this. And I hear you, but we're low.
I know we're low, but
Already,
I think it's a
and-
mistake. It's just personal.
Yeah.
Well, right. There are other cities trying to do similar projects. I mean, all the other cities are being hit with this dissolved solids thing and all of that as well, too. And that's why probably 75% plus are higher than us on this. But obviously we cannot gaze into their finances. Waynesboro, we have a pretty good idea because they got all kinds of income from retail that we won't until after, hopefully, we get crossing fully online, and that could be when we revisit on that. But right now, I am most comfortable with 89 to answer your question, Mr. Claffey. I'd be willing to do 88 on it. I think we have so many things that directly affect the citizens of Staunton that we can't let fall behind on this.
And if I had a chance to tell Mr. Haney, and I will, he'll probably read it. What he did, I'm sure it's by something, is hideous. It is hideous to what the kind of rate that he did.
It happened elsewhere in the state.
I know
That's
that.
market
I know
forces.
it. I know
That's-
that. I'm just
yeah.
saying, fine.
I hate to put Haney's name on that. I mean,
know it. I was upset.
that's market
If I were you, I was
forces.
upset.
Well, and it's also, I mean, as people pointed out, there, anytime you look at available real estate, there's something like 20 houses or less within the city. There is a great demand for houses in this city because of the quality of life here.
There is, and we don't have any for sale.
Well, we don't have any land to really build on. I mean, that's part of the problem too.
Has-
I mean,
and-
Child over there.
And when we have a
Jeff.
higher
Got the
tax
number.
rate.
Oh, yeah,
than
sorry,
Waynesboro,
Jeff has
they're
the number.
gonna
Jeff
go to
has the number.
Waynesboro.
Yeah.
I so rarely have the numbers. I'm
yes,
very
we-
excited
we
about
should
this
I
just-
one.
couldn't find it.
The sewer was 2.98 and the water line
I
2.22.
did have that. I doubted myself.
Oh,
that.
yeah. So
Snooze,
it's
you
total of
lose last
5
week.
something.
Gosh.
Yeah, so,
He's
okay,
right,
so
yeah.
that's over 5 million.
Yeah, so it was,
Right,
I knew it
in-
was over 5
Yeah, in
million.
Uniontown, to make that a viable,
Make it viable from a utility standpoint.
from a utility alone
There's going to be
standpoint.
other
There's
issues
also
that need to be resolved.
roads, yeah.
Yep.
Thankfully, other people build the houses. Yeah, so that's where I'm coming from on this, and I am most comfortable with 0.89. I really appreciate all the work you guys did to see where you could cut on that. That's why I'm, okay, 0.88. Go a couple cents lower than we've ever been. But I think it's gonna have to go up later. But we can do this for now as our knee-jerk reaction to a high appraisal. Second highest in recent history. That's where I stand, 88.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was thinking about people leaving Stanton for this tax rate. All I know is that people are clamoring to move here, and maybe some people will move. And it's a choice if people really want to stay here. Or, I mean, we make decisions about our finances and where we live all the time, and people make choices, but I think our choices need to be based on what's best for the city and what the things that have been presented to us that need to be taken care of. And these are major infrastructure projects that are ahead of us. And if we don't begin to, I just believe in putting more away so that we have to borrow less. Like Alice said, I don't know why that seems like a crazy thing. I hate debt. I like to pay for things with the funds that we have, because paying interest is just throwing money out the window. That's why I
Well,
try to pay my mortgage down as fast as I can.
On this court, we're going to borrow,
so-
we'll pay as much in interest as we borrow.
Well, nobody
So-
brought up the stormwater that we will be looking at.
So I'm aware that this tax rate affects everyone. It's a decision that's being made in every locality around the state. And well, not every locality this year, but a lot of localities around the state. Personally, I would like to be able to put more money aside into the CIP for the things that are coming down the pike, so we don't have to have even more painful conversations. I am going to be on city council for 4 more years, so I'm going to be sure to use whatever money that we say is going to go to the West End for West End, and make sure that nobody snatches that for another project. And it has to happen over the next 4 years. I'm obviously still learning all of these things. I've learned a tremendous amount tonight. Probably showed more of my ignorance tonight than what I actually know, but learned a lot. And again, I feel it's important to put money away, to use cash over borrowing, because in the end, you end up spending more when you have to borrow. And I don't know if that answers your question. Were we ready to?
Were you going to say a number?
Oh, we were going to say a number. Sorry, I was lost. Well, I would like to stay with the 0.89 and take the difference between the plan that you gave and put that money and earmark that for CIP.
Mark,
I am, and I know, Michelle, probably was your previous words were like trying to slap back at me, and I understand that.
I was Mayor, Mr. Robertson, yeah.
But I understand where you're coming from, but I also know that we do have to look out for every citizen. And I really think, yes, like I said, I'm lucky enough to fall in to that thing where I can afford to pay the extra increase, but 26-27% increase is just, to me, it's too much. And the only way that city council as a body has to do that is to reduce that rate. To reduce that rate to where it is not hurting people so badly. There are young people, there are older people, poor people. They are struggling on a daily basis. And I hear it. I go to the gym. I go out downtown. I says, what's your feeling about this? It's 90-10. Please lower it. This is too much. And so I'm trying to stay true, to what the people that I've talked to.
I hear you.
And I just think that right now is not the time. We are looking at the inflationary rate we've got, not just in this city, but in the state and in the nation. And where everybody says it's a possibility we're going to have a recession. So then what is going to happen to people trying to pay their water bill, pay their sewer bill, pay their real estate tax, go to the grocery store? Look what they're trying to put it, stuff you can go to and buy a thing of a basket of groceries. I used to be able to do it for 40 or 50. I can't even get out of there for less than 100 for one person. That is true figures.
Okay.
And so
sorry.
I just think there will be better times. There will be better times. And yes, then we can put that money away. You put money away when times are good. When times are bad, you're scraping every cent you can to pay for everything.
So, sorry.
I'm at 86.
Can I just, sorry.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to point out, so Mr. Haney said that the median residential single family home was $216,000. And so at 0.89, the annual tax would be $1,922. So when I divided that by 12, it's $160 a month. So the family living in a $216,000 home, and again, that's the median price for a home in Staunton. If we lower it to 0.86, $216,000 times the 0.86 tax rate is $1,858 divided by 12 is $155. It's a savings of $5, and I know that it is an increase and it's a savings of $5. But when I look at $5 more as $863,000 investment in the city, it feels like we can make that investment. I know it's an increase. It's $5 more over an increase, but I also feel like that is giving us a huge return on investment in what we can do with that money for the city and the things that we do for the city in return. All right, well, we just disagree, Mark.
I know
We
that.
disagree, yeah.
I'm just saying
I
that.
know that. That's
yeah.
what government's about.
I know, we're disagreeing, but, and I've been looking at these numbers for a long time and weighing that, the $40 you said. So he's and $5 difference between 0.86 and 0.89. And then yes, that $5 is on top of another increase. But for me, that translates into a tremendous investment in our city. So for me, yes, I'm willing to make that decision to invest in our city.
I have a question real quick too. Is Maggie's, they have a fund for tax abatement for people who make,
Yes.
would that apply? That would apply to like the real estate or
Yeah, it's real estate for the elderly and the disabled. And there's also a veterans. It depends on your income and your assets.
so that could be
But
something that
it's-
somebody that's really on the low end of the spectrum could possibly access.
And remember, the council a few months ago increased
There,
that, made sure the qualifications were changed because of the social security increase, so people wouldn't be kicked out of the program necessarily.
Right,
Right.
right.
they could maintain their eligibility for that program.
Hand that down to Terry. That's
Those-
the
and
forms.
Those are the forms.
And yeah, I think I don't know it.
Yeah.
I'm sure Maggie, maybe we could advertise this a bit more because when I talk to folks, they don't know about it, but maybe it's because they're not seniors. So
Well,
seniors
and-
probably know about it.
Just
Yeah.
Some
pertains to
seniors
such a
know,
small
and-
Yeah,
percentage.
right,
It's such a
exactly.
small.
But I do
number
always
that-
tell people, and I send them to her website on the city's website so they can see whether or not they fit into that category. And I don't know, but perhaps those numbers can be raised. I don't know if that's possible,
I
but so
think we
that more
can raise
people would
some
qualify.
to some
Don't
extent.
know.
Amy, you next.
Well, I just, y'all know that this whole time, I think I came out the very first time saying, look at 85. And I did that because I really, it's not that I don't want to see the city be able to do the things that we need to do, but I have confidence that we will still be able to, and that we will be able to provide relief to an elderly population, those on a fixed income. And I do not think that the 89 cents budget provides enough relief. And I think that, that's why when you all came back last week and with 86 cents, I was very encouraged because it wasn't 85 cents, but 86 cents was something that I felt like was, a good thing, that it would provide a appropriate amount of relief. And, I think that that's important to people, and it's not cutting services. It's not cutting, and it is, based on everything that we know, we are still going to come out with, a lot of money over and above that we're going to be able to fund the CIP and do the things that we want to
We
do.
hope we're going to come out with a lot of money.
Based on where we have been, I think that when you think about, taking a risk. I don't want to take a risk with other people's money, but at the same time, I feel like in one sense, by not taking advantage of the opportunity to lower the tax rate to 86 cents from 89 cents, we're doing just that too, if you think about it in a different light. We're not cutting it and giving people the relief that we could. So I appreciate my friend right here coming across and trying to compromise at 87. And honestly, I could still talk about that, because I think that this body of government, we have shown this city how we can work together and how we can function in a positive way. And I think that's really important. I know I've heard so many positive comments from people who are just so glad that we're up here and we're working together and we're trying to compromise and come to, solutions. So, I want 86 cents, but I could compromise at 87 cents if, that's how it goes. So.
And
Alice?
so when I look at the revenue comparison and, I looked at where we increase the budget in the meals tax and the lodging tax. And I see the increased revenue maybe for 2024 that we'll be up there at 6 million from that. But when you go down to the local sales tax and the business licenses, we can't actually move that up quite as bit because of the fact that Mark just said, what if a recession hits? So if a recession said, who is going to be out buying anything? Who's going to be out? Who's going to be going places and staying in Airbnbs and hotels? And who can afford to buy groceries and all these things? So when we push that number up, that's telling us that we're betting on something we can't foresee yet. So I'm agreeable to get 1 cent up, and that's on the meals and the lodging. But with the sales tax and the business licenses, because we don't have we don't have really very much here to continue to build on. And the licenses coming in, you know, small businesses and all of that, if we hit that place, that's gonna stall out. So I can come down, I can get that 1 cent out of this and the 1 cent, so I can be agreeable to 87. Because that wouldn't affect really a whole lot
We take the
We're
final
coming
vote
down
when, next
with
next
2
week?
cents
Next week.
Correct.
is-
from
Okay.
her proposed 89. Because she already found the other cent in expenditures, and you really didn't cut anything out of that. You're just not funding something, and I believe it wasn't funded really in the first place. You're just coming down a little bit, right?
There will be some operational cuts to get to that on the expenditure side.
Not
but it
service
wouldn't-
level reductions.
No
it's
service
just
level reductions,
operational
no
cuts.
personnel reductions.
Right.
There
Okay,
are
so,
some
all right.
operating
Yeah.
expense
So
reductions
some
in their
like
budget.
if somebody wants this or department needs that or want that or want that, that's going to be saying, well, we got to put that on hold. So that's what you mean by,
No, take for instance, the police department has 44 officers on the staff and we budget for 44, but we only have 43 working. So there's one staff position that didn't get filled. That's going to be an operational.
That's the
redu-
attrition
that's
savings
attrition.
portion. So that's, we're already accounting for that, the
Yeah,
That's the
300,000.
$300,000.
okay.
So this is in
Johnson
addition
and-
to that.
Yeah.
I just want to understand the operational point that nobody's, no jobs or no services. Right.
No.
So
That's
you,
correct.
okay.
But there
so-
are line item reductions in their
Right.
budget. And I did these very meticulously, like looking at what have they spent the last 3 fiscal years? And what is their budget? And can they give me $500 or $1,000? And just did that across the city, kind of compressing and not
Okay.
really taking away, it's just money that they hadn't spent. Like if they've been spending $8,000 in that line and they have a $9,000 budget, they could give me 500 or.
Okay. So I can see where
Thank you for being thorough.
so that's where those 2 items bring up the other 1 cent, and these 2 items will bring up the other 1 cent and take it down to 87. So I'm good with 87.
Gary?
I'm really, I feel like I'm where Michelle is. I think we should be putting money away to take care of things in the future, you know, and I'm not talking about 5 years from now, I'm talking about next year, you know, and if we cut this to this point, we don't really know what's going to go into our CIP until the end of next year. And I mean, that's kind of, I personally, in my business, I put money back. This year I've had to buy like $70,000 worth of new equipment. And I'm just lucky that I had been putting money back to where I didn't have to go out and finance this stuff, you know? And I mean, that seems like small potatoes to what the city's talking about. But I mean, I hate to see us not fund things properly. You know, I mean, we're cutting things not to the bone, but we're cutting them to where they're not as tight. I mean, they're too tight sometimes.
But she found the 2 cents is not,
But you're also basing it on having sales and meals and other taxes being higher.
it's just 2. It's just 2. And she had already increased that, and I'm
That's-
very confident because I
That's
had talked to our
500
revenue.
That's $575,000. I mean, when you
That's
look at that,
nothing when you
nothing.
consider we were 6.5 last year and we're 4.5, gonna come in
This year.
4.5 over this
well, I
year.
hope we come in 4.5 over this year. I mean, I
So
really
do
do.
I.
I
So do
would, I
I.
would love to be proven wrong, but I guess I'm a little bit on the conservative side when it comes to that. Is I want that money in my hand. I don't want to think that it's going to be coming down the road, you know. And I think our tax rate here is not. We can't base our tax rate on Augusta County and Waynesboro. We might be in the same county, but we can't base it on that. We're more like our city is probably more like Lexington than it is like Waynesboro, you know, and their tax rate is 92 cents. And
And they
We have a
wrote-
lot of property in town that we don't collect taxes on. We don't collect taxes on the Frontier Museum, the Western State on Mary Baldwin. We got a lot of, and we, you know, plus the things that the county owns in the city. There's a lot of buildings, a lot of things that we're not getting taxed on or getting taxes on. Plus we have a lot more agricultural land in our city than most cities. You know, and the thing is I think that we could go, I think 89 is the lowest we should go. You know, I think really it should be 90 or 92. I think that we should leave it alone, but I'm willing to come down to those points.
So in,
But then I'm the tax and spend,
Your taxes been a little
But
bit.
if you-
liberal, yeah, I'm
if
the
you
tax
move
and
it
spend
down-
liberal on the.
if you move it down 2 more cents, it gives people the opportunity to continue going out and
Going out to
eat out
Yeah.
and the meals tax decrease and also coming into our city and, you know, people around the other counties and other places are still coming into our cities and being able to lodge here. And that'll be an increase.
Well, as long as we don't have a recession, because first
As
thing
long as
people cut out
Right.
is eating out and traveling.
but then you're moving it down to 87 and then people, you know, they would be okay with that. If we had a recession, then you're not still at 92 and where people
Giving
can
them a
barely
relief.
afford to
Right.
do all those things.
3
We're
cents
just
higher
giving
than
them a
it's
little
ever
extra
been.
cushion, and that's not going to even hurt. That 2 cents is not going to even hurt us funding those things that need to be funded.
Right.
But also.
At 2 cents is not going
That
to hurt.
much money is not going to really hurt the citizens either and in the long run, it will help them if we're putting that money aside to do projects in the city. You know, I mean, I don't know. I'm at 89.
All right, let me go last. Couple things I want to point out. This book, a lot of hard work went into this and I appreciate everybody's effort, but it doesn't say future, it says 2024. I want to point that out. We're here to do the 2024 budget. And we can't be saying, I can't do that because something bad could happen. That's not our job. Our job is to react to the current conditions, do the best we can. I want to point out something that I'm trying to be consistent to my beliefs. This is my campaign promises from when I ran in 2020. And number 2 says, exercise fiscal responsibility and community development. Market Stanton Crossing before any further expenditures. Review tax rates to make competitive with surrounding areas. And I said this in 2020, and I'm not saying that we have to be the lowest.
We just cut Stanton Crossings marketing.
We're gonna market Stanton Crossings and it's paid for. It's coming. But the truth of the matter is, we've got to make sure that we are not standing out as an obvious, most expensive city in the area.
We're not.
Lexington, somebody brought up here, does annual assessment increases. And the inner city in Lexington went up 19% last year on an annual basis. We're doing our 25% on a 2-year basis. So we're better than any Lexington. So I'm not going to compare us to Lexington at all. I went and got a different set of figures than what Michelle got. I appreciate her using her numbers and I got these numbers, but I mean, it's $40 a month on Dave Metz's average house, which he said used to be 250,000. Then it had a 25% increase and it went to 312,000. And that's pretty common too. When you start doing that, that's when you get the $40, $50 a month. If you're a landlord and your tax bill goes up that, you're gonna turn right around and raise it on your renters. And while we say we want affordable housing, we're hurting ourselves if we try to put everything on the burden of the real estate tax. We have to look at the rest of our revenues. We've been underestimating since COVID. And admittedly, we haven't got it right yet. And it's not a gamble. It's a look at the figures and say, is this falling off the face of the earth? And it isn't. We can relatively predict where we're going to be. And Jesse will tell you that I have probably bothered her every time I see her. Are we hanging in there? Or are we going to still have this $4.5 million overage at the end of the year? And therefore, when you're talking a CIP plan of only $1.2 million, we could push that CIP plan to $1.5 million and easily fund it every year. And there still be leftover money to handle other things. There is money in our equation. We're not cutting anything. We're not cutting any services. We're giving 5% raises. We're blessed with this ARPA money that we are getting some long-standing projects done. I really think we can cut our real estate tax. I am an 85 advocate. I am willing to compromise. I think Leslie and Jesse did a great job in coming back with this, with the revised one at 86. I think that thing is spot on. And that's a great compromise as far as I was concerned. I think it bears a lot of value. I mean, to me, that's where I would like to see it. And I'm willing to give up my 85 and go for the 86 because they did a lot of work on this and got this thing to 86. And I appreciate all your efforts for that. And it's a combination of doing it on both sides, both revenue and expenditures.
You have a $200,000 home, you know, $40 a month is not going to be, it's not going to be that much money. I mean, it just, you know, that's the thing that gets me. I mean, the people I would worry about are people that maybe live in a you know, really small, like 1 or 2 bedroom home. It's like not worth that much money, but you know, the ones that are, most of these people will be able to afford this money and they want city services, you know, and I just, we're saying we're not going to cut any services, but I mean, there's things that we need to be doing down the road, and we can't just wait until next year to start doing it or the year after that. That's what the CIP is, like a 5-year plan that you plan on what you're going to do for the next 5 years.
Leslie, has anything on the CIP not been done in the last 5 years?
Well, there is an unfunded list, so it's not like every project that's submitted is funded.
And isn't that 5.5 million?
And the plan that.
Is that
gener-
5.5 million?
I'm sorry.
Is that 5.5 million?
I don't know what
The
the
FY
dollar.
24.
Huh?
For FY 24.
That's all funding sources. Yeah.
That's what I thought.
2.2 would need to come out of carryover.
2.2. But that list that's been going on for years.
Well, we cleaned that list up a little bit, I think. in
Got
this
rid
year.
of the library, the 14 million. that has
Right, because
been on there
we're
for
revisiting
years.
that. So that's kind of starting over. So yeah, typically there's more projects that come in than are able to be funded. But in this instance, like you have a CIP that's been in front of you, and we'll revisit that with you all when we have the carryover discussion later this year. And at that point in time, you can revisit the CIP also and make other decisions about that. So,
That'd be what, October?
That'd be good. for us.
well, like November, December, January time.
How soon do you need?
Well, you have to have an ordinance prepared for you all to hopefully adopt next week. I know the assessor is waiting on a tax rate, so he's gonna have to start getting bills out soon.
In order to
But-
prepare the ordinance, we need to know a rate and then
Where, yeah, if it's.
are you
yeah.
keeping the proposed changes and doing CIP? Or are you?
So I don't
reducing
hear consensus. I hear
some
three,
taxes or?
I have 386, 389s and 187. So there's no majority on the tax rate.
I'd be willing to go 88 if it would break the log jam. I don't feel good about it, but I mean, I would be willing to go to 88. And
Brad said he'd go to 88.
I'd be willing to do 88 if it would help it, if we'd get it done.
I said
Yes.
I would go to 87 with Alice.
So do we take everything and
you still at
average it? We just
87?
average all of these?
At 87?
Yeah, as long as she brings
So,
these two
Ms.
back.
You're at
Woods?
87, I'll go. Will you go?
I'll go
Okay.
And
87.
Mayor will go
Random.
87. There's your
And what
four.
that it means though.
Well, when you go to 87, is that you want me to adjust those other local taxes up or have a CIP reserve for future projects?
I prefer CIP, whatever we put it at. I'd like whatever overage go to that.
Raise the revenue.
Raise the
Whoa,
revenue.
whoa, whoa.
Oh, all
Hold
right.
on.
It's already
Hold on.
raised. It's
Yeah.
already raised.
CIP,
It's already
CIP.
raised.
Michelle, that gives you less
That gives you part of some stuff
consternation,
you need
right?
for-
CIP.
So 1 penny into the CIP, 1 penny's worth.
Can I just ask though,
I'm just trying to get
Yeah.
clarification. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Ms.
yeah.
Edwards.
There was one other thing I wanted to ask about a funding option. There was an unfunded library position, I believe.
Yes.
Is that a possibility that we could fund that last library position? If we went to 87 and took that instead?
Well, that's up to you all.
Yeah, I mean,
It is. There
I mean,
are
would there be
other
enough?
positions
there
too,
are other
but
positions.
I-
I understand. It's just what I'm advocating for.
I know.
So, yeah, I'm sure there are other positions. I don't know what they are. So,
At
I'd
one-
want to
They-
know the
they
other
make it part of
positions
the attrition.
before.
I just know they've gone through a lot of turnover
They
this
have gone
year.
through a lot of turnover. I think that would this be like the communications or?
I thought it was like a social
Social
media
media.
communications type.
So this would be a new position that they've never had before.
Okay. Okay.
A lot of their turnover though has been in their substitutes and in their circulation folks. So this
Okay.
would add a completely different type of position that they haven't had in the past.
Okay.
Yeah, so it wouldn't be an additional circulation person or.
So go
be
back.
for
So
like-
if we go to 87, you need us to decide if we want to do, what are the two options
If you want to keep the proposed changes that I put before you,
at the
that
86?
that got to 86.
Right?
If we keep that, then I need to know what to do with that extra penny. Do we put it into the CIP for Uniontown?
Yeah.
West End.
Yeah.
I'm amenable to that.
I'm good with that.
I'm,
So-
I would say put the extra penny in for the CIP.
So you're
that
gonna
make
put
sense?
$287,000 off the 86 proposed into CIP, and we're gonna land at 87.
I would need to know what you want to call that CIP line.
Mm.
Is it split between the three things that she mentioned? Is it going to go to one project?
We have.
Do you
can-
want
can
it
we make
undesignated until you come up?
Yes,
Can we do that?
yes, I think that.
Because we do
Yeah,
have an
I-
undesignated
that's-
line that you can put it there until you decide.
until probably the
To be
plans are
designated at a
returned.
later date.
When those three
Yes.
plans are returned,
And-
perhaps we can figure out.
This could be something you could revisit with the capital budget at the end of the year.
That's
Yeah.
I'm
good.
game. to
When we
good
get
with
the
that.
library plan, the West End plan and the Uniontown plan back.
So
I think-
take everything that's been proposed, but make the rate 87 and put the difference in the CIP, right?
Yes.
Like I'm just repeating
Gary,
it.
can you
just-
go
Is that
along with
good?
that?
Y'all good
Come
with
on,
that?
man.
I really don't feel good about 87. I really don't. I don't
No,
feel
I
good
don't
about
either.
it.
I don't either,
either.
Terry. I
No,
don't
I
I
don't
either.
really,
either.
I really don't feel good about it.
No,
And
that's, yeah, that's 3 cents less than it has ever been, even with a larger drop, even with a larger rise in real estate values, percentage wise. But
But it's all about compromise here, guys.
That's
Well,
what we're
we-
trying to
well,
do.
we're- I feel like I've already compromised.
I know you
would-
have.
yeah,
Yeah.
Up from
yeah,
92
this is
to
a,
89.
yeah,
think
this
we all
was,
did.
89 was a pre-compromised number.
Right.
Not for me.
Hmm.
Lower than that.
All right.
So.
Is that all you? Is that what you need, ladies?
Comfortable, no.
Is that what you need?
Resigned, yes.
I think I have some bruises. I don't know.
We all do.
All right,
I want-
so we'll
Thank you.
prepare the ordinance and it'll be in the packet tomorrow. And so right now, there's no plan to have a budget work session next
Right.
week on the agenda.
Good.
It's a pretty full agenda, so I was wondering how I was gonna squeeze that in if I had to do that, but
Good.
Good.
apparently,
We are going to have a work session.
yes,
just not a
sir.
budget.
It's gonna start at 5, but there's a lot on the work session and I didn't have a budget work session scheduled, so
Good.
it doesn't sound like there's needs to be one.
And then we'll be set up for the final vote at the.
Yes, sir, at the during the regular meeting. Yep, it'll
Sounds
be.
good.
Ladies, thank
Thank
you
you
for your
so
work,
much.
No,
Mr.
no.
Johnston,
Yeah, thank
Amanda,
everybody.
Thank you, guys.
everybody.
I'm
and
sorry y'all
Lord
had such a
Kylie,
long
thank
day.
you, Thank you. Yes, sir.
Thank you so much.
I
Yes.
guess.
This is a work
No,
session.
no,
This is
no.
a
Oh,
work
sorry,
session.
it's a
No.
work session.
Wait,
No,
one
we can talk to
second.
you after.
1 second till we adjourn and then you
Wait until we adjourn, then we'll talk.
Thanks everybody for all your efforts. Meeting adjourned.